This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Max, the one to watch for the best in entertainment, now has live sports with the Bleacher Report sports add-on.
5, 4, 3, 2, I let one go.
Stream hundreds of select live games from MLB.
That's gonna go!
NBA, NHL, U.S. Soccer, and NCAA Men's March Madness.
We just see what we think we just saw!
And it's all included for a limited time with any Max subscription.
He got him!
After the promo period, add it for $9.99 a month. Base subscription required.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello, Serie A Chronicles. I'm Mina Rizuki, and I'm doing the first postcards edition of this new way that our pod will be set up from now and then. It is us recording our perspective, talking about certain talking points, going back and forth. We've explained this already. I don't think you really want to hear it again. But it is Sunday evening. I've watched Juventus just win 3-0. I'm kind of happy. I'm also have it paused at the moment, but I've got match of the day because I've got Premier League football to do tomorrow. So it's kind of like one of those crazy nights, but I'm also very, very excited by a bunch of things. So welcome. Thank you for tuning in. If you're a Patreon member, then welcome, especially to you. So let me start it off by saying that, as you all know, Italy has a new national team coach. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk about this, Nikki and I, but as you all know, Roberto Mancini has walked away from the national team, and he has now officially been replaced by Luciano Spalletti, the man who guided Napoli to their first Scudetto in 33 years. I think most of us are thrilled with the decision. I'm going to put it out there. I'm not a fan of Antonio Conte, but I would have been fine with him coming on as well. Would have been happy either way. I think that there are some great Italian coaches, so you can't really go wrong with the choices. As long as Ventura isn't back there. But it was a great ride under Mancini, so it is a little bit sad to not have him there. I think that certain mistakes were made, and there's been a heavy split by people who understand his decisions to walk away, and others who have labeled him a traitor because he didn't give the team enough time to prepare for the important matches and qualifiers coming up in September. I don't really have any judgment on him, to be honest with you. I understand his positions. I don't think he felt fully supported, as he's mentioned in his interviews with about Gravina. The FA, let's be honest with you, the Italian FA is not the very best, and it's a lot of men trying to cling to power and trying to make sure that they are heard, and really the power should be with the football people, with Mancini, not in breaking away the group of men that he has relied on and who he's collaborated with on this special journey as the coach of the national team, and having a say on his unit, on his staff, just makes no sense to me. So I'm not really surprised that he's just done with it. If he goes to Saudi Arabia, I'd like you to turn down 40 million and then tell me, if you will turn it down. I know there's romance in obviously not doing that, and it would be disappointing if he goes. Of course, it's always disappointing when people bow down to money. Having said all of that, I genuinely do believe that if he was offered more support, we wouldn't be here talking about any of this. As it Anyway, all we need to know now is Luciano Spalletti has the job. We are thrilled to obviously have him as the coach, especially with this Italian side that has a lot of young teams that did exceptionally well. Maybe not win the finals, but the under-19s did. And we're going to talk about a special player within their ranks, Michael Kayode, the man who actually scored the goal in the final that won the trophy. And what a performance he put in, not only throughout that tournament, but for Fiorentina as well over this weekend. I'm sure that you heard about the controversies when it came to Spalletti, because obviously it was this push and pull with Aurelio De Laurentiis, who wanted to be paid because Spalletti had said that he doesn't want to work at Napoli. The only way De Laurentiis would allow it to happen was to say, well, you'll have to pay 3 million should you work, like a non-compete clause. And then the Italian national team was saying, well, we're not competing, so we're not going to pay that clause because it's just a matter of principle. And eventually, back and forth, Spalletti looks like he's going to pay it with his bonus. So, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but I agree with De Laurentiis, you know. People are like, you should feel the patriot side, you know, the desire to want Italy to win and do anything you can to help it. Life is a business, have contracts, obey the contracts, work as a functioning country that understands law and order, you know. Somebody signed a contract, you just pay the amount, get over and done with. Let's start this out, and it doesn't need to be drawn out and spoken about, you know. Gab actually wrote a wonderful piece about it, Gab Marcotti, in the sense that everyone looks bad in this situation, and it does, it just looks so bad, all of it, you know. But I honestly think the FA looks the worst. Either way, I'm especially happy for Spalletti because I just think that every day he just has new fullbacks to look at and choose from and rely on. I think Udogie was just absolutely fantastic for Tottenham Hotspur because Ange Postecoglou is just turning out to be a great coach. And it's early seasons, and you know me, I like to make judgments very quickly. But what a wonderful performance from the kid. And, you know, we've seen him. We know he's great. So I have a lot of time for Italians who go abroad. And you know that I feel like if you're not getting your chances, he was getting his chances. But to all those others, I hope you can look around and see the journey of players like Jude Bellingham, who wants to try different opportunities, experiences abroad. You know, go play in the Premier League. Go, don't sit there and hope that Juventus or Milan will choose you and promote you. If you're not getting your chances, there's a big world out there, you know. Go play for Lyon, go play for Portugal, whatever. Portuguese side you might want to. So I'm glad that Udogie is playing for Spurs. I'm glad that he is really owning it right now in the Premier League. I'm thrilled for him. I'm thrilled for Michael Kayode. And I'm going to start with Fiorentina because I just thought that was such a special performance from them. And I don't know where to start because it took me back, Captain Biragi's goal. I was just like, it was fantastic. I don't know what to expect from Fiorentina because there's a part of me that's like, how high is their ceiling? How far can they go? Because let's be honest with you, this isn't a squad that can compete with your top four, right? It is not a squad that is as rich as others. Then you've got quite a competitive league there. You've got, your big hitters, your Inters, your Juves, your Milan and Napolis. But then you have like your Roma and Lazios. Atalanta is always this freaky beast, that shows up and does brilliantly. And then it's like, where do Fiorentina lie in all of this? It is Genoa. And it's worth mentioning it's not a top Genoa, right? It's a newly promoted side. It is a side that is without Strootman, that is De Winter on the bench, that has Malinovsky just arrived. Macias is not there, so it's not a top strength Genoa side. It is one that is still trying to familiarize itself with Serie A, but Fiorentina was just fantastic. Whether it's the experience of Bonaventura and his amazing intelligence, whether it's Biraghi having, managing those types of finishes, those types of goals that just sets your heart racing, whether it's Mandragora, who's personally one of my favorite people to watch at Fiorentina, whether it's Artur, like what? So this guy, we've always known that this guy, I want to be like, this guy, we knew he had potential when he was at Juventus. Obviously, we knew he had potential when he was at Barcelona. And he showed glimpses of that under when he was at Juventus under Pirlo. But, either he was unlucky with injuries. I mean, he was just never available, right? And he didn't always seem like he quite got what he was asked and tasked with doing on the pitch. And it's been difficult because it's not like he came to a really consistent Juventus side, one that had already I feel like it's been a mess for the last 5 years, even when we were winning. So it's just not been great times. But that performance for Fiorentina under Vincenzo Italiano, who continues to show what an impactful coach he is and how far he can really take a team. But it was such a solid, commanding, he was such a presence in midfield. And I'm starting to think that Italiano is a coach that I wouldn't want to buy a player from, because I feel like he has that magic touch that he can turn any player into something fantastic. And then I'll buy that player and then he'll be a dud. Because if you can show that much personality playing for Fiorentina after your performances at Juventus, after the failures that you've suffered, even from a psychological point of view, not playing at Liverpool, it was really magnificent of Arthur to come in and put in the performance that he did. Bonaventura was easily man of the match. Fiorentina were just fantastic. It's wave after wave of attack. They still make mistakes defensively. They still conceded a goal. We know there's always things that they can improve on at the back. I'm excited to see them this season, but I'm mostly excited about Michael Kayode, who was chosen in place of Dodo as right back. And now he was the under-19 player who scored the goal in the final that allowed Italy to win the championship. Finally, we reached a final that we actually won. He's a fantastic presence. Spent some time in the youth team at Juventus, but they didn't want to keep him. He went to Serie D and now he's at Fiorentina. Long story, but he is a player who really, he reckons himself, but just the right amount. He knows that he's special and he wants to play with no fear. And it's something, that kind of mentality belongs to people like Jude Bellingham. And the fact that he's got it makes me very excited to see him going forward, and it makes me very excited for what Spalletti has to work with. You have him, you have Udogie, and you also have Cambiasso. So there's been a lot of talk at Juventus because Juventus put in a masterful performance. Now you guys are laughing less at me when I said that they're my favorites to win. Highest wage bill, most expensively assembled side, poorly, whatever you can say, but there is a lot of talent in that side when it's healthy. And playing once a week, you feel like maybe they can do it. Maybe they won't. I mean, they're only targeting top 4, but the club seem very positive about their chances. Allegri seems very positive about his chances, even though he's downplaying it now. But that performance was wonderful. I'm not going to lie. I'm very happy by what Juventus managed against Udinese. I don't want to get carried away because it is Udinese. But that's a team that can either win by 1,000-0 or lose by the same scoreline. So you never know what to expect from them. But Juve away from home, that understanding between Vlahovic and Chiesa, that understanding between Cambiasso and Chiesa. 3-0 in the first half. Really splendid stuff, pressing, moving, insertions, attacking, great attitude, going forward all the time. This is something that I didn't know that I could see from Juventus anymore. I'd gotten used to so much mediocrity, right? I know Juve can win. I know they can grind out victory, but this seemed something like a throwback to Allegri's first stint, and it was very exciting to watch. I loved Vlahovic's performance in general. I thought that he was wonderful, and not because of the penalty he scored, but because of the offside goal that I wish was counted, but Ealing Jr. was offside. But you could tell that there's fire in his belly. There's a desire to prove himself. He's moving a lot better at the moment. I think Chiesa is obviously fantastic. I worship at the altar that is Chiesa. Here's the thing, right? There's a lot of good players in this world and, they're here, but Chiesa can be there. But he's just somebody that doesn't really listen to instructions. And it's kind of a little bit frustrating to watch sometimes. So obviously Allegri thinks that he's a striker. He thinks he's a winger. There's been arguments about his role before. serious arguments. He played as a striker against Chelsea in the Champions League, if you remember. And Allegri was like, this is where I want you to be. But Chiesa is a player that wants to show you he's really good. And sometimes that causes problems because he won't necessarily listen to instruction. But I do agree with Allegri that I think he needs to stick a little closer to Vlahovic, because you have Alexandro, you have Cambiaso, you might have Kostic. You have a lot of people that can occupy the flanks. And Chiesa, we need to have players in the middle because he's a special talent. He understands how to score goals. He is so technically gifted, and he has a good understanding with Vlahovic. So together, they won't be isolated. Neither of them will be isolated. They can play off one another, and I think it could be really beautiful. But I do sort of need Chiesa to listen to more instructions. I still think the midfield needs work at Juventus, and I wonder if you agree with me, Nikki, there, because it's easy to get away with this type of performance, but when it's Udinese and your flanks are doing so well, then you're scoring goals and you're efficient and defensively secure. But against teams that can keep the ball, against teams that have a great rhythm in midfield, it's going to be tough, because Miretti, so frustrating to watch, isn't he? Always trying to take a shot at goal when you're just like, look, where's the better option? Rabiot and Locatelli are not yet in the perfect condition. So, but I guess my question to you, Nikki, is Inter was fantastic. I'm starting to think that maybe, well, I'm going to let you speak about Inter, but I just want to ask you that question. Is Arnautović the better choice, right? He might just be the better choice for Lautaro Martinez to play alongside him. What a great performance from them too. Monza, I expected more. What about Juve? Can they win it?
Oh my goodness, Mina. I'm so excited to talk to you about week 1 of the new Serie A season. Do you know, I didn't think I would be. Honestly, like after the Lionesses lost the final on Sunday morning, I was just a bit like, going from a World Cup final to paying attention to club football again just feels like really underwhelming. And of course, like, I was sad for Lionesses. I mean, obviously, like, I've talked about it plenty before. I've talked about it on Serie A Chronicles. I've talked about it in things I've written. I always, in my heart, pull more for Italy than for England. But I am half English. My family is half English. And the Lionesses have just been so easy to get behind as a team for so much of the tournament. Of course, I was cheering for them. I was watching the game with friends. Out in there was a pub that had like an outdoor area, and it was beautiful sunny day, and it all just felt set up for them to win. Of course, they didn't deserve to, and that's a whole different podcast that I shouldn't get sidetracked by. But I didn't think I was going to be excited to go and watch Serie A again after that. I felt like that had killed the day of football for me, but couldn't have been more wrong. Coming back to it on Sunday night, just like on Saturday night, I really enjoyed this first round of games. I think before I talk about it, since you started on the Italy job, I'll just sort of speak to that quickly. I don't sort of want to get us too sidetracked because you've already talked about it, and I think there's broadly like quite a good consensus around Spalletti. He was such an obvious choice as, reigning league champion, currently out of work, even though technically he was under contract with Napoli, and someone who has earned it, I think, in terms of even before this league title with Napoli, just what he contributed to Italian football, of course, sort of the originator of that famous 4-6-0 formation at Roma, using Francesco Totti in an innovative way, someone who I think had really left his mark in Italian football even before coming and finally winning his league title. It feels like the right step in the right moment for him. I'm excited to have him as the Italy manager. I think, as you were hinting at with Antonio Conte, you know what, maybe I would have felt between the two more confident of Conte just to drag us through this qualifying group, which has not started great for the Euros. But overall, I see more enjoyment and upside with the Spalletti appointment. So Spalletti was the one I wanted. I'm nervous for him because the first 2 games are away to North Macedonia and then at home to Ukraine. And with having lost already at home to England, these are kind of must-win games, right? Like, these games are going to define the group. Those are 2 teams that Italy are going to be fighting for second place with. As dismal as that might sound, it's the reality. And the reality is that Italy did lose a World Cup qualifying playoffs North Macedonia. Now, it was a freakish game. It was a game where everything that, could possibly be awful was awful, and North Macedonia didn't really have a shot until they scored. So you'd hope we'll be fine, but I am nervous. I'm nervous for him coming in and having those games. I mean, they're like 2.5 weeks away, or a time more than that, but they're not far away at all. So it's straight into the fire for Spalletti. But I don't want to talk too much about that. I want to talk about Serie A because it was an exciting first weekend. You threw me the question right away about Marko Arnautović. Let's start there. Really sort of good win for Inter. Obviously, Monza were not European contenders really last season, but they were a solid team. They pushed some teams. They beat some teams. They definitely sort of put the cat amongst the pigeon on that first sort of season back, first season ever in Serie A, and this wasn't sort of on paper necessarily a totally straightforward game. We talked before the season started about how much Inter had lost. We're saying about Dzeko, saying about Lautaro. So of course, for them to win this game and for Arnautović to be an important part of it, setting up Lautaro's second goal was a really encouraging start for them. I have all sorts of mixed up feelings about Arnautović, to be honest with you. I think on the one hand, there's something neat about it as a story, like it's come full circle, right? Like he was at Inter more than a decade ago. And I remember then, like sort of kid who was all a bit arrogant and a bit of swagger to him, and at the time thinking, are you really as good as you think you are? And I think compared to what he thought about himself at the time, probably he wasn't. But he's gone and had a career, and perhaps has done enough in his career that he merited a chance at some point to come back onto his bigger stages. Of course, he was very close to signing for Manchester United a couple of years ago. And I think part of my reservations about him is, number one, age, because he's 34 years old. But number two, the United turning him down, it wasn't just about age. It wasn't just about being perhaps a bit underwhelmed by his profile. But there was that backlash against him for the incident he had with the Austria team, where he was he was accused of using racist language against the North Macedonia player. He did deny it, but there's been that story and another couple of other stories about him saying things that don't cast him in a great light. And I think that stuff nags at me as well with Arnautović. So I slightly don't know how to feel about all of that. I certainly can't pretend I was enthusiastic about his signing, but I could certainly see why Inter would look at his performance in that first game and think, you know what, we might not have done such terrible business here. Even then, I still want to come back to, but you did have Dzeko, right? Like you did have someone who could do this job well, and you wouldn't have had to pay a 10 million transfer fee for, and who, look, it's not like with Arnautović, you're buying a young player, you're still getting one who's 34 years old. But still an encouraging debut. It's an encouraging start for Inter all around. I thought lots of good things in this game. I thought Thuram had a nice first Serie A game with them as well. Barella, obviously being Barella, had those moments that made you jump up and down. It was good. It was what you want to see from Inter. I don't know if I'm resisting everywhere, Mina. Like I feel like it's the weekend of like part of me like wants to like give you like the most knee-jerk reactions. There's so much stuff that you could give knee-jerk reactions to this weekend, right? Obviously, like Arnautović and Inter winning is one thing. You talked about Juventus, and you're asking, do I think Juventus is the real deal? And I find that question really hard to answer as well, because I mean, maybe Udinese are just really terrible. They didn't look great. Obviously, the big transfer with them that sort of has dragged on through this summer is the sort of idea of Smardzic going to Inter, and that hadn't happened, and so he doesn't start. Here comes off the bench. He was okay off the bench, but clearly that's disrupted your preparation, right? You've got talking about an important player who thought he was leaving and then didn't leave, and like how's that impacted you? For sure, that's all part of what you've got to ask with this Udinese team. But definitely I was struggling with trying to read that game, being like, okay, is this that Juventus are playing so well that Udinese I think it makes you look bad, or are Udinese actually maybe in some trouble this season? I mean, they weren't great last season, and I could see them being a team that gets dragged into a relegation fight. So time will tell, I think, is my feeling. But I was encouraged by, I'll say one thing really clearly, which is I was really encouraged by the way that Juventus went at the game. I think there's some sort of confirmation bias in how you think about things and how you remember things. But I really can't remember watching a Juventus team play with as much. I can remember, but I mean not recently under Allegri. I can't remember them playing with as much zip and direction and directness and just speed and willingness to go at an opponent as they did in that first part of the game, the first half. It was really, really exciting. And yes, as you mentioned, Federico Chiesa moving inside. Allegri obviously talked about that at the end of the game, said this is his role. I think him playing out, basically said that I think him playing out wide is a wasted opportunity, it's a waste of his talent, leaving him as a winger, because he should be scoring 14 to 16 goals a season. And that's a gauntlet thrown down, right? It's a gauntlet thrown down to Chiesa. I'd love to see him take it up. We all remember what a player he was at the Euros. We all know he had that cruciate ligament injury the January afterwards, and we all want him to get somewhere for Italy and obviously Juventus too, for Juventus as well. But just people observe him and see him and see he's been this sort of exciting talent. You want to see people realise their talent, and yeah, so I'm definitely excited by that performance from him. I was excited by how he linked up with Vlahovic. It would be wonderful for Juventus if that turns out to be a connection that really works. And I'm a big vibes person. I really am sometimes. I think I probably talk about it too much, given, there's so much tactical stuff to analyse as well. But I think Allegri is a vibes person as well, honestly. I think that was always kind of the joke with him. He released his Mr. Allegri Tactics app, but then actually when you listen to him talk, he's all about, a manager shouldn't obsess in the details. I'm a sort of eureka moments person. I like to go with my whims and my instincts. And I just felt like watching Juventus, the vibes were good. The vibes were good between Chiesa and Vlahovic. They seemed to be enjoying each other. The vibes were good in a sort of cute, ridiculous way. When Vlahovic just stood, I'm sorry, but it was funny to me, but it was cute. Vlahovic was stood in the dugout holding up Pogba's shirt because everyone wants the Pog back. I don't know, I think that stuff in a goofy way matters. I always talk about it with Pogba, his best time at Juventus, and Dybala's best time at Juventus was when they were both there and they were both playing with their mates. They love playing with each other. Maybe, just maybe, there's something in that recipe for Juventus. And certainly I was encouraged by Andrea Cambiaso's performance in this one as well. It was good stuff from Juventus. It was. I don't know if it was the game that most impressed me of the weekend. Although, having said that, which one was? Napoli obviously got the Victor Osimhen that they wanted and they needed, and we've talked about that in our season preview. Why do we think that Napoli is safe in the top four? Victor Osimhen, easy answer, and he showed us why again. He's brilliant. Gazzetta described him in one article as the best sort of human number 9 in Europe, as in basically saying, look, Erling Haaland's an extraterrestrial, but he's the best human after that. I'm not even sure there's as much between Haaland and Osimhen as I used to think anymore. I really think perhaps it was such a Haaland-esque goal that he scored to get things going here that it made me think, But it was a convincing win. But again, it's Frosinone, right? So what do we take from it? Because newly promoted team, even though they scored first, it's a tough ask. Then Inter, I've already talked about, impressive, but they were only 1-0 up for a long time in this game. There was a danger in that Inter game for a while. I felt like when they only had that 1-goal lead, that they'd fall back into the old Inter ways, and that could really come back to bite them. I do think this talk of them signing Pavard would be a real game changer for them. I think that's a really surprising signing, given how much they've struggled, and there's seems to be very much on the table at the moment. If they get that across the line, it would be impressive stuff. But yeah, both solid starts, but my knee's not ready to jerk for either of them quite yet. Is my knee jerking for Andrea Belotti scoring goals at Roma? Is your knee jerking for Andrea Belotti scoring goals at Roma? Mina Belotti, of course, didn't score a single goal last season at Roma, but he didn't just score 2 goals against Salernitana. I'm talking too fast because I want to say too much in the limited time I've got. he didn't just score 2, he had the goal disallowed before he started. I actually loved that goal most of all. I thought that was pure like best Belotti. The taming it on the right foot, taking it on the left foot, that was what he was at his best. He was a very sort of no touches wasted, do what you have to do to get the ball into the net kind of striker. He's got that physicality, he's got that ruthlessness, or at least he did. And if he could bring that back, that could be really exciting for Roma. Obviously, the result wasn't great for them, 2 incredible Candreva goals. But I want to know, Mina, is Andrea Belotti back? I want to know, Mina, is Charles De Ketelaere the real deal? I mean, he's such a player I want to get behind, and seeing him score, having not scored again all season, like Belotti didn't score all season for Milan, and then to score within 45 minutes less than, coming off the bench in the second half of that game and scoring the opening goal for Atalanta of the season, having already hit the crossbar, having already sent a header just over. Brilliant stuff to Ketelaere. Mina, is this jerking my knee, or is De Ketelaere going to be the real deal at Atalanta? And the other knee jerk is Federico Chiesa going to be back? So those are the 3 which I wrote about in my column, and I want to know, Mina, if your knee is jerking, whether you think that those 3 can be the real deal again. Belotti, Chiesa, De Ketelaere. And I also want to know, Mina, what you think about Lazio, because Maurizio Sarri was giving it the full conspiracy theorist this weekend. He was talking about this 0.18% chance that you could get drawn to play consecutive away games against Napoli and Juventus and Milan in your sort of away games 2 to 4 of the season. So they started this game away to Lecce, and then the next 3 away games are those 3. And then his team went and lost 2-1 to Lecce from a goal up. Obviously, as he's talked about, new signings aren't really there yet. They weren't necessarily in the team for this one. But are you worried for Sarri, or are you thinking, okay, we'll see this start to pick up steam as those players come in? Let me know what you think.
Hi, Nikki. This is the second time that I am going to try to record this postcard to you in response to your wonderful one earlier. And I recorded one. I answered everything. It was just so wonderful. I made jokes. I talked about my life. And then it didn't save. So, I'm kind of a bit gutted because it's 1 a.m. I should really be sleeping because I have to wake up very early to go and see you at Sky Sports for our show tomorrow there. But things haven't worked out the way that I wanted them to. And I shall have to start this recording again. It kind of feels like, do you remember a long time ago when we recorded a podcast, and one of our first ever, and it didn't record. We were with Gab at the time, and we had to do the whole thing over again. Anyway, let me start. So the first thing you said to me is, what do I feel about the strikers, whether it's Charles De Ketelaere, obviously Belotti at Roma, or Chiesa at Juventus? Are they back? Are they back to being their very best? So I thought the match with Atalanta and Sassuolo was pretty good one, because I thought Sassuolo handled Atalanta pretty well. And then, of course, the substitutions came, and Scamacca sort of changed things around, was more of a dynamic force, and I can see the beginnings of something very special between him and CDK. I'm not going to keep saying De Ketelaere. I just feel like it sounds a bit obnoxious at this point. And I just thought that, could this be interesting? Now, I kid you not, Charles hasn't scored since, guess when? Guess. April Fool's Day 2022. Isn't that really? I don't know whether it's a bit funny or not, but he hasn't scored, obviously, all of last season. And then, this was his first Serie A goal. And Atalanta, basically, Zapata was doing such a great job. It's not such a great job because Sassuolo managed to really stop them from scoring. But I thought there was so much that he did that reminded me of the technique and his brilliance at Atalanta. And there's just all these now comments about him moving to Roma. Now, supposedly he's got cold feet because the transfer has been agreed between Sassuolo and Roma. And I think that he could be an interesting addition to this Roma side. But Gasperini seems to still really love Zapata, and you can see a lot of that from the way he plays. There's just, Zapata is still Zapata, and he reminds me of some good times. But But either way, all his technique didn't unfortunately result in a goal. And Charles De Ketelaere then had these two great chances, right? Like a header that didn't go his way, then he hit the crossbar. And there's just a part of you that thought, well, he hasn't scored since April 2022. It's never going to happen for this kid, right? And then it does. It goes in. And I think that, I was really surprised because I was like, what? I can't see it going. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? How is this a goal? And I think that even he was surprised by it. But how nice to get that monkey off your back. How nice for you to get back to, people talking about you, to people knowing that there's a talent there. And you could see Gasperini in his post-match comments. He knows that there's a lot within this player. He kept saying about, this guy's coming from Milan. He's done a lot of good work already. Asked him if he's the player that Atalanta's missing and sort of alluded to the fact that he was that. So I'm really excited to see him going forward because you know how much I've loved this player. I've always thought that he's really special, always really enjoyed watching him, albeit in the Champions League. I was a bit jealous when Milan got him at the time. I was like, he's a player that I wouldn't have minded to have, myself. But unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. And I'm kind of thrilled that he's under Gasperini. Stefano Pioli is a great coach. Sometimes things just don't work out, whether it's the weight of the shirt, the name Milan, how expensive he is. I just feel like price tags, they don't get talked about. When they're very high, they can really impact a player on a psychological level. You saw that, for example, with João Felix. I think that he's always had that thing about being so expensive, other than the fact that he doesn't really seem to enjoy Atletico Madrid. Caicedo was so desperate to make a difference for Chelsea when he came on this weekend, and at 115 million, it just turned out to be like this devastating performance that was poor, to say the least. But I hope De Ketelaere is there. Meanwhile, for Chiesa, so much talent. If he manages those quick accelerations like we know he can, when he scores the goals that we know he can, that relationship that seems to be really interesting between him and obviously Vlahovic. But really, I need Chiesa to be at the top of his game, and I want him to play as a striker more. Because firstly, it's something that's missing in the Italian national team. Still interested to see what happens with Scamacca and his journey with obviously with Atalanta as well as Retegui and all the others. But firstly, it would be really great if Italy has a striker. Secondly, Juventus have a lot of players on that left-hand side, whether it's Alexandra, not a great option, whether it's Iling Jr., whether it's Kostic, whether it's Cambiaso. There's a lot there, a lot of players who can hug the sideline, who can hug the line as well. But with Chiesa, I need him to stay in the middle, and that's something that I really hope that Allegri insists on as well, because he has the talent to do it. And I think that he could make Vlahovic a lot better if he's closer to him too, because I don't want Vlahovic to feel isolated. I think it ruins his game. I think he's somebody who likes to play off somebody else, which is kind of why I was open to the idea of bringing Alvaro Morata back, because he likes to be the guy off the guy. But either way, Gazzetta asked the question of, do we trust this Juventus side? I hope so, but I can understand why they wouldn't either. But the other question that I found more relevant is there really a need for Lukaku? And the way that the way that Vlahovic celebrated, it seems like he really is happy at Juventus. He's happy with his teammates. He doesn't want to go. So I hope that he doesn't go, even if I've had question marks about him. But Chiesa, I would like him to sort of, be the striker, because he's just so endlessly talented. And the better that he does, the better that, the more choice that Spalletti has going forward with regards to which players he can pick. 16 goals. Honestly, Chiesa's talent means that he could score so much more than that. So I think that it's better to give him that so that he has something to work towards, even if it's psychological. But I really want him to reach at least that, because I think it's definitely, that weapon is definitely within his arsenal. And then, of course, there's Belotti. I know that you really like the first goal that was then chalked off for offside, but I actually really like the goal that was counted, his first one. Just the physicality, the sheer determination to get it, to score it. It was like, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to literally push through all of you. I will raise hell. I will do what it takes. I kind of only ever feel like that when I have a complaint to make and someone's really upset me. I'm like, no, you're going to listen to me here. God, I sound like such a Karen when I said that. Am I a Karen? Anyway, but sometimes when I'm like so infuriated because I feel really hard done by, anyway, God, I think I am Karen. I will explain the situation another time, but I promise you that I am not a Karen. At least I hope I'm not. I've got to start having this conversation with people that know me better, and then I can figure out if I'm a Karen. Anyway, while I'm having an existential crisis, let's get back to talking about Belotti. Roma. I didn't know what to make of their performance, to be honest with you, because I know that it's a draw, but there's a lot there that I thought was pretty cool, and pretty good, really. I mean, if Belotti can get back to scoring, then I think that they don't really need to go for any other striker, because Tammy Abraham won't come back. And I think Belotti might just be enough with Lorenzo Pellegrini and, of course, Dybala. But, it's one game, so we don't know if the real Belotti's back, because we haven't seen him. Now, it wasn't since April Fool's Day, but since the 1st of May 2022, we haven't seen him score a goal. And that was with Torino. So really impressive for him to be getting back there. Just his style of play, rescuing them, getting a second goal, the physicality, the sheer desire to make a difference. It seems like he's come back with this mad ambition to be the guy. And I thought that he answered the question about bringing in another striker by being like, well, whatever happens, happens sort of thing, was very good as well. I would love for Belotti to be excellent again, even if he might be just a bit too old now for the national team. But he's such a good guy. You want him to succeed. But otherwise, for Roma, I really liked Houssem Aouar. Nice player. I'm excited to see what they can do when they have, Pellegrini, Dybala, and everyone else back. I really think that this could be an exciting year to watch them. So, but the question is, will they get Zapata? That is what I'm dying to hear. And how many goals can Belotti get? Anyway, I just finished watching Milan. I feel like there are so many good teams right now. Nikki, I'm kind of like so into all of them. But one thing I really liked is that during halftime, they didn't go back to the dressing rooms. They sat outside because it was too hot in the dressing room. And it kind of reminded me of like, I'm hot. I'm so hot at the moment. And it's only 25 degrees in London. And I say that, but it's 1 a.m. So it's like 17. And I am absolutely boiling. I feel like I've spent most of the day trying to get in front of a fan. Can you imagine if I lived like in a really hot country, just the sheer depression that I would feel? Yes, so them not going back to the dressing room is something actually that reminds me of when I had to cover Verona. In the first game of the season, and I think it was when Ronaldo had just arrived to Juventus, and you know what Verona is like, right? It is like crazy hot. Although Bologna is crazy hot, so you'll know that. But it was crazy hot. I genuinely thought that I was going to faint. And they had obviously no AC in the press conference or anything like that. And I just thought at that point that if I get fired, then I get fired, because I really thought that I couldn't, like, I was so nauseated that I was just like, oh my God, it's going to be so difficult. But luckily at the time, there wasn't a need for it. And I don't remember why. But yes, I can only imagine how hot it must have been in that dressing room in the Stadio dell'Ara. When Milan had to play Bologna. I'm starting to realize that I might be a Karen. Like, a lot of stuff is just too hard for me to handle. Nikki, you tell me, right? Yeah, I think you tell me. Anyway, I think you were right about Christian Pulisic. I mean, you had very high hopes for him. What is going on? You had very high hopes. My camera's just has a mind of its own. But you had very high hopes for him, Christian Pulisic. And I wasn't sure, because there's a part of me that's like, oh, it's a roller coaster, But I think one thing that I didn't consider was just how good Stefano Pioli is at sort of getting these players embedded into his schemes to teach football. And he had just such an impact in that match against Bologna. Milan started like fireworks, it's attacking threats all over the place. Reinders, for me, was man of the match. I think he's such an interesting character, an interesting player. I want to see how that midfield develops, because Loftus-Cheek sort of, did a lot of the hard work. Reinders, he can be really special, honestly. Pulisic, obviously, just his attacking potential, his creativity, and you could feel like he's really happy where he is. I mean, he came out afterwards and says, this is the right step in my career going forward. So, and Giroud is always the man you can count on to score the goals. But all in all, to have, all these new starters, and to have embedded so quickly into the schemes and to create that performance. Although there's something to be said about Bologna being really inefficient going forward in their attacking play. I did expect a little bit better from them considering how they ended the season last year. They had such good performances, especially in the second half of the season. And I know that they need to replace some talent. But Arnautović is obviously gone. But again, I still expected more from them, especially when playing at home. And so I was quite surprised by that. And when you look at the fact that, Tomori, he's still a worry for me there at centre-back. So I don't know whether defensively Milan will have issues against teams that are better going forward, because we obviously saw that Bologna isn't that. Okay, my phone is actually getting crazy now. But it is what it is. So I'm excited to see whether you think that Milan could be a team that actually goes for the Scudetto. Who's your favourite so far from all the performances that we saw, during this weekend? Who is your money on? And can we just mention, Candreva? That goal is so stunning. His second goal. The first one is beautiful too. But his second goal is so special. And yeah, if he can continue doing that, then Salernitana can definitely stay up. But we need him to continuously do that. So just a question, I guess. What do you think of Milan? And who is your favourite performance for this weekend? And as for Lazio, you did ask me about Lazio. I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. I was going to say that when I picture Sarri, I'm a very visual person. So I was just sort of think of him as this man with this cloud over his head with rain and a cigarette stub in his mouth. He's just always so grumpy. But anyway, I didn't actually watch the match against Lecce. I know I saw his press conference afterwards in which he seemed devastated by the defending. I cannot blame him, to be honest with you. But one thing I will say is that I did expect Lazio to start with a bang, and I do feel sorry for him when it comes to all these away matches. He has a point, but when is there ever a time when good old Sarri is not complaining about something? So let him complain all he wants. At the end of the day, I care very little for it. I just care that he does something special in the Champions League, because you know how much I care about that. But I'll leave it with you. Let me know about your favourite performances and whether or not actually you think Lazio can make top four. Ciao. Oh, one thing. People were telling me they're going to be dark horses with all these players that they purchased, and then they start naming them. And I'm like, none of them are really that impressive, except maybe one or two names. So certainly not to the level that I would expect of somebody who departed like Milinkovic-Savic. So anyway, I just feel like I've spoken too much now. So over to you.
Hi again, Mina. So long since I've seen you. All of about 5 or 6 hours ago that we were together in London for our penultimate Sky Sports News transfer update. We'll be on again next Tuesday, and then that's us done for the summer. I have been told by producer Simon that I'm only allowed to have about 5 more minutes because he wants to be able to collate this all into our first podcast new season. So I can't talk for too long on this one. You were asking about Milan and how I thought about their performance on Monday night against Bologna. Obviously really impressive, really encouraging, I think, the way they started, the way that Christian Pulisic started. I'm sorry, I'm really trying to keep a straight face, but if you're wondering why I'm bouncing so much, it's because my dog is trying to retrieve something from the sofa right next to me. So I'm trying to be professional and talk to you seriously. But next to me, I have a dog who's trying to find his toy that's gone down the back of the sofa. I mean, I'm a brilliant, really encouraging start from Christian Pulisic, who, I was sort of vaguely optimistic about. I thought he he was really, really sort of slotted straight in there and was impressive. I thought Loftus-Cheek had a solid but unspectacular debut. I thought that just overall you got the impression this Milan team finally has exactly what we've talked about, some different options. It's got some ability to be not reliant on Rafael Leao. And I think I just really enjoyed how Pulisic celebrated that goal of his as well. There was a certain sort of cocky American boy swagger about it, which is super cliche things I'm falling into. But I don't know. I think there's something about that attitude that will serve him well, that sort of willingness to back himself, that willingness to take that shot, that willingness to try to be the man again. I think that's what he knows he's got an opportunity to do at Milan this season after really sort of finding himself on the fringes at Chelsea. He's got a chance to put himself at the centre of things, and that willingness to back yourself and take the shot on and try to be that player and not second guess yourself. I think some of it does require a little bit of that arrogance if you're going to be in the goal scoring positions on the football pitch. So I liked the swagger. I think, with all of these teams, I'm just not, I think now that I've had a 2 days to digest the weekend's games and a day to digest the Milan result, I just don't want to get carried away with anything, I think there's so much that we still don't know. I think every season, the start of a season, you watch games and someone will really start off well and they won't be able to sustain it. So time will tell. As I said to you, sort of in our non-recorded time at Sky earlier, my worry from the opening weekend is actually that we're going to end up with an extreme sort of set of haves and have-nots in Serie A this season. I think we're definitely going to have a really interesting title race. I think there's going to be several teams that can contend and compete with that title. And I do put Milan in the category that can, definitely still after that opening weekend. But what I'm worried about is that there may be a real separation between the top 7-8 teams in Serie A and then a group who really can't hang with those teams. Teams you worry about on the opening weekend, obviously Genoa, who had such a rough start against Fiorentina. But I think there are others. I think Udinese really struggled against Juventus. I think Bologna in this game without Arnautović did look really overmatched. And yes, it was only 2-0 in the end, but Milan really took their foot off the pedal in the second half. And who can blame them, given what you were saying in your episode about, in your postcard about the heat and the fact they didn't even go in at halftime for their halftime break in the locker rooms because it was that hot. So I think any of those games, it was the same thing with Juventus, where you saw a team take their foot off the pedal in the second half. Don't be surprised by that. It's August. Playing in August is pretty brutal in Italy, and a lot of these games are kicking off in 30 degrees or more temperatures, even when they're being played late in the evening. So yeah, a really strong start. You were asking who my favourite performance of the weekend was. I think actually my favourite of the weekend was Pontus Almqvist at Lecce against Lazio. His goal was brilliant, and there was so many brilliant goals. I was about to say a real goal of the week contender, but I think there's probably about 10 of those this opening round. Obviously, Candreva had great goals. Pulisic's goal was great. I'm going to forget them if I try and list all the great goals. There were a lot of great goals, even though there weren't that many goals in Serie A this weekend. So I definitely, but I really liked Almqvist. I thought he was so direct, so willing to carry the ball. I think he had 7 successful dribbles in that game against Lazio, as well as scoring that goal, as well as doing, even better than his goal was the side flip goal celebration, which was incredible. But yeah, I'm really sort of think he was, if I was going to pick out any one player this weekend, I know that sounds a bit hipster, not to take someone from one of the big teams, but Almqvist was the guy who really blew my socks off this weekend, and I'm super curious to see if that was a one-off or if he's actually another really exciting new talent that we've got landing in Serie A. Definitely a really positive start for Roberto Mancini, having replaced Baroni on the bench at Lecce, and having just said about, I think there's potential to be like a haves and have-nots in Serie A this season. Could Lecce end up being something in between those? Could they be a team that could find their way into those middle spots and maybe force their way into the European conversation for the Conference League race? Who knows? Far too early to say. Trying to resist all those jerking knees. If you wanted a team performance that impressed me the most, I think actually for me it was Fiorentina, just because to do that when you aren't one of the teams that's assumed a title contender, to go away from home and clobber a team, even if it was a team just up from Serie B, to integrate new players like Nzola into the team right away, to do it without Sofian Amrabat, by the way, who we still don't know at time of recording whether or not he's going to be there at the start of this season. We talked about that on Sky Sports News today, and Manchester United and Atletico Madrid still chasing him. So, as ever, Vincenzo Italiano, a star, even more of a hero this week. I'm sure you've probably seen it for the amazing clip during the game where someone sat in his seat and he physically hurls him off. Get out of my seat in the dugout. So yeah, individual player Almqvist, team form was most impressed with Fiorentina. I will stop so producer Simon doesn't kill me, even though I've got loads more to say as always. But I'll catch you, Mina, and I'll catch all of the Chronicles Patreon tifosi who are watching this, and all of our listeners on the podcast again very, very soon, I'm sure.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.